on the Evan Miller Report, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Clay Evans with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
Good evening to those joining us across the nation on SHR Media Networks and also now live on PunditPressRadio.com. Welcome to the Evan Miller Report. It's just 2 minutes after 7 on the East Coast, 2 minutes after 4 out here on the West Coast, live from San Diego. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report. Thank you for joining us tonight. Also with us tonight at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, Orleen Kurla joins us tonight to discuss the many issues that we have to deal with week in and week out in the war on, can I get back, Master Computer?
Global socialism!
Thank you very much. We'll have an update on that, on the global socialism battle tonight on the Evan Miller Report. But we start off with this developing news out of Pakistan tonight. The husband of Farazi Perveen, the Pakistani woman stoned for death for refusing to participate in arranged marriage, has now told CNN he killed his first wife so he could marry Perveen. Authorities said the first wife was killed 6 years ago. He said, I quote, "I wanted to send a proposal to Francois, so I killed my wife," Mohammed Iqbal said today in an interview with CNN. Zafar Hamid, District Inspector General for the Pune Police, said Iqbal's son from the first marriage alerted police to the slaying 6 years ago. Iqbal was arrested but later released on bail because his son forgave him. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we brought this story to you, brought you the story a few days ago on the Evan Miller Report, so we wanted to update you on this information. And this doesn't change my view that I expressed on the Exceptional Conservative show with Ken McClellan last night, or the views I've expressed on this program, that the real war on women has to do with the abuse of women in the Middle East. And it doesn't matter what country you're in, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, any country that has Islamic values, they treat their women this way. And it's disrespectful. I wouldn't even say it's disrespectful. It's despicable the way Muslim husbands and Islamic husbands treat their women. It is terrible, and we shouldn't be standing for it. And I say shame on the Democrats here, and especially CNN here. So I know what CNN is trying to do. I had to update you with the news, obviously. My own personal opinion, and I talked with Ken McClellan about this off the air today. What CNN is only putting this out here as an excuse why this woman needed to be killed. No woman should be killed because she doesn't want to marry someone she doesn't love, especially in an arranged marriage. So to the Democrats who are trying to put an excuse up why this woman needed to be killed, there's no excuse why this woman should be killed. This woman shouldn't have been killed in the first place, and shame on you, Democratic Party, and shame on you, those of you on the socialist left, and those of you in the Republican Party who support Sharia law in agreeing with such a thing. And that's the memo tonight here on the Evan Miller Report. Moving on tonight, pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine have shot down a military helicopter near Solovest, killing 14 people, the country's outgoing president says. Alexei Chernov says rebels used a Russian-made anti-aircraft system and that an army general was among the dead. The town of Solovest has seen fierce fighting between separatists and government forces in recent weeks. President-elect Petro Poroshenko has vowed to tackle bandits in the east. Russia has reiterated its calls for Ukraine to stop its military campaign against the pro-Moscow rebels and start a real national dialogue. The Russian Foreign Ministry also urged the United States and European Union to use their influence on Kiev to stop Ukraine's slide into a national catastrophe. The helicopter, according to a BBC correspondent, the helicopter arrived at Pashtuk near Solovest to unload and pick up a group of people who were finishing their tour and going on leave. They were shot down after takeoff. I have talked to the pilot and also to General Konchitsky. The pilots were very nice guys, polite, correct, friendly. General Kosvari was very capable and very accessible, a good commander who would fly to the checkpoints where his soldiers were. He would personally bring them food and water. He kept an eye on everything. The fighting here has come more frequent recently. In the last few days, it broke out even during the daytime. Previously, it happened only at night. However, the last 2 nights were relatively quiet. The Army manned checkpoints, preventing the forces of the People's Republic of Donetsk from moving about freely. The mood is good among the soldiers. No desertion or talk about giving up. People are in good fighting spirits. According to the BBC's Mark Lowen, who is in the region, Thursday's incident was a major blow to the Ukrainian army as it pursues its offensive against the separatists. The helicopter, as the reporter mentioned, was hit during heavy fighting between Solovsk and Kromastov after it had dropped off troops at a military base. And President Trudeau said the 14 dead included that Major General Sergei Kostov, head of the Combat and Special Training for Ukraine's National Guard. It is one of the worst losses of life for government forces in the conflict. Last week, at least 14 soldiers died in a rebel attack on an army checkpoint near Donetsk, some 80 miles, from Solovsk. Earlier this month, separatists shot down 2 more army helicopters also near Solovsk, killing a pilot and other servicemen. Mr. Polnatov has called the separatist terrorists intent on maintaining a abandoned state. After Sunday's election, he vowed to tackle them in hours, not months. I am moving on to Nigeria tonight, folks. Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan has vowed to wage a total war against the militant Islamic group Boko Haram. Speaking on the 15th anniversary of the end of military rule, he said, quote, international terrorism threatened Nigeria's democratic gains. Boko Haram has waged an increasingly bloody insurgency since 2009 to create an Islamic State in Nigeria. Its fighters killed 42 people during a raid on Gurusmut's village in the northeast on Wednesday, a survivor has said. Villagers were shot and hacked to death, and many homes have been torched, said a female survivor who spoke on condition of anonymity to the BBC. In Hassani, Boko Haram has been holding more than 200 schoolgirls, as you well know, captive since last month, demanding a prisoner swap. BBC News examined the challenges facing Nigeria's president in 60 seconds. Earlier this week, the BBC learned that the government called off a deal to swap some of the girls for Boko Haram fighters in custody. With the support of Nigerians, our neighbors, and the international community, we will reinforce our defense, free our girls, rid Nigeria of terrorists. Goodluck Jonathan continued in a televised speech to mark Democracy Day in that country. He added that he was determined to protect Nigeria's democracy. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on anything that is going on in Nigeria right here on the Evan Miller Report. All right, moving over to North America tonight. Retired General Romano Delaware, the UN commander in Rwanda during the 1994 genocide, will resign from the Canadian Senate, he has said. His last day in office will be June the 17th, he told colleagues yesterday. Mr. Delaware, 68, has acknowledged he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder after witnessing atrocities during the genocide. He said he plans to dedicate his time to research on the disorder as well as other humanitarian causes. It is with some sadness, but indeed much optimism, that I will announce that I am resigning from my seat, Mr. Delaware said in the Senate yesterday. There are so many things to do, as well as increasing opportunities to do them, that I find myself short of that most precious of commodities, time. Among Mr. Delaware's planned endeavors after leaving office are to serve as a senior fellow at the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies at Cordova University and as a member of the UN Secretary General Advisory Committee on Genocide Prevention. He will also conduct research on, as I mentioned before, on post-traumatic stress disorder in conjunction with the University of Southern California, and has been contracted to write 2 books on post-traumatic stress disorder and conflict resolution. Prime Minister Stephen Harper thanked Mr. Delaware for his work via Twitter following the announcement. Thank you, Senator Delaware, for your service to Canadians. Best wishes for the future. Between April and June 1994, an estimated 800,000 ethnic Rwanda Tutsins and moderate Hutsons died at the hands of Hutu extremists. The killings ended that July when Rwanda Patriotic Front, a two-state-led rebel government, marched into Kingal and seized control of the country. As commander of the UN mission in Rwanda, Mr. Deller sought to warn the UN hierarchy about the planned massacre, but was denied permission to intervene. He remained in Rwanda through the killing to protect those seeking refuge and has been credited with saving thousands of lives. Mr. Deller has retired from the Canadian Forces in the year 2000 as a lieutenant general and was appointed to the Senate to represent Quebec as a Liberal in year 2005. In December, he suffered a minor road incident, which he attributed to a lack of sleep due to the stress over a spate of recent military suicides and the stress of the coming anniversary of the Rwanda genocide. I simply ran out of steam, he told Senate colleagues following that incident. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take a short break on tonight's program. But when we come back on the Evan Miller Report, we'll have a couple more international stories, including Iranian hackers are using Facebook accounts to spy on the U.S. and others. Also, John Kerry has told the troops of Edward Snowden to man up. And in battle, veteran Chief fights on despite many people telling him to resign. Plus, John Boehner and Nancy Pelosi agree on something? I know, say it ain't so. We'll have that story and more on the Evan Miller Report. We hope you stick with us.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics. Corey with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on blogtalkradio.com and Country Express Radio. Some of America's bravest warriors are returning home wounded. Here's one of them.
My name is Norberto Lara. I served for 11 years in the United States Army. While I was on a combat patrol in Baqaba, Iraq, a rocket-propelled grenade took my arm off at the shoulder. When I came home, I felt alone. My family was around me, but I couldn't talk to them about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I remember just thinking, man, the way I am right now, I don't want to live. I was discharged from the Army, and I've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project since 2007. You don't have to be severely wounded to be with the Wounded Warrior Project. We do have a lot of guys that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Being able to share your story, I guess it kind of helps you wrap your mind around what did happen over there. Just because you've left the military doesn't mean your life is over. Because when these guys are coming home, I'm kind of leading and training them. Instead of for combat, I'm leading them, training them to heal. If I come away with anything from Wounded Warrior Project, is them giving my life back. My name is Norby, and yes, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm okay.
Don't suffer in silence. Contact woundedwarriorproject.org.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost,
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends.
I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Country Express Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller here with you. Corey Evan with some of the day's other news in just about 5 minutes or so here on the program and those listening in on podcast tonight. All right, folks, moving over to Iran tonight in an unprecedented 3-year cyber espionage campaign. Iranian hackers created false social networking accounts and a bogus news website to spy on military and political leaders in the United States, Israel, and other countries, a cyber intelligence firm said today. Slight Partners, which uncovered the operation, said the targets include a 4-star U.S. Navy admiral, U.S. lawmakers, and ambassadors, and personnel from Afghanistan, Bahrain, Iraq, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Syria. The firm declined to identify victims and said it could not say what data had been stolen by the hackers who were seeking credentials to access government and corporate networks, as well as intelligence on weapon systems and diplomatic negotiations. If it's been going on for so long, clearly they've had success, iSight Executive Vice President Tiffany Jones told the Reuters news agency. The privately held company is based in Dallas, Texas, and provides intelligence on cyber threats. iSight dubbed the operation Newscaster because it said the Iranian hackers created 6 personas who appeared to work for a fake news site, newsonair.org, which used content from the Associated Press, the British Broadcasting Corporation, which we use on the Evan Miller Report on occasion, Reuters, and other media outlets. The hackers created another 8 personas who purported to work for defense contractors and other organizations, iSight said. The hackers set up false accounts on Facebook and other social networks for these 14 personas, populated profiles with fictitious personal content, and then tried to befriend targets, according to iSight. To build credibility, hackers approached high-value targets after establishing ties with victims, friends, colleagues, relatives, and other connections over social networks, including Facebook, Google, LinkedIn Corp, and Twitter. The hackers would initially send the targets content that was not malicious, such as links to news articles on newsair.org in a bid to establish trust. They would then send those links that affected PCs with malicious software or direct targets to web portals that asked for network login credentials. iSight said the hackers used 14 personas to make connections with more than 2,000 people, the firm said, adding that believed the group ultimately targeted several hundred individuals. And moving on to Edward Snowden tonight, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has labeled intelligence leaker Edward Snowden a fugitive from justice who should, quote, man up and return home. Mr. Kerry added that if Mr. Snowden, age 30, believes in America, he should trust the American system of justice. His comments came in wake of an interview on the NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, in which Snowden said he sought asylum in Russia because the U.S. revoked his passport. Mr. Snowden also described himself as a trained spy, not a low-level analyst. A patriot would not run away, Mr. Kerry said on Wednesday. Mr. Snowden wants to come back to the United States. We'll have him on a flight today. Mr. Kerry also called the former National Security Agency contractor confused, adding that this man was done great damage to his country. He should man up and come back to the U.S., John Kerry said. In the NBC interview, Mr. Snowden claims he was, as I stated, a trained spy who worked undercover overseas for the CIA and NSA. But he described himself as a technical expert who did not recruit agents. What I do, he said, is I put systems to work for the U.S., and I've done that at all levels from the bottom of the ground all the way to the top. Now the government might deny these things. They might frame it in certain ways and say, oh, well, you know, he's a low-level analyst. But when end of quote. But when Mr. Stone fled the U.S. in May 2013, he had been working as a technician for Bozo Allen, a giant government contractor for the NSA. Last year, he fed a trove of secret NSA documents to news organizations, including the Washington Post and the British newspaper The Guardian. Among other things, the leaks detailed the NSA's practice of harvesting data on millions of telephone calls made in the U.S. and around the world, and revealed the agency had snooped on foreign leaders. Well, folks, I still have the same opinion of Edward Snowden as I did when we first reported this story 3 months ago on this program. Good job, Edward Snowden, for putting all this information out there. and keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully one day America, at least the politicians in our government here in America, will accept you back. But good job on that NBC interview, my friend. All right, folks, moving on tonight, we're going to go ahead and go over to Corey right now, and he has some of the day's other news. Corey?
Jay, the official watchdog for the Department of Veterans Affairs, claimed in a scathing report that the department has a systematic problem with clinics lying about patient wait times as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle joined calls for Secretary Eric Shinseki to resign. The VA Office of Inspector General released its interim report on Wednesday as part of its ongoing probe into whether veterans died as a result of underreported delays. While not reaching any conclusion on what led to those deaths, the office released troubling statistics regarding the embattled Phoenix VA facility, suggesting workers understated wait times in order to make their internal figures look good. The office, in its preliminary findings, determined that veterans in Phoenix waited an average of 115 days for a primary care appointment, far longer than the VA's official statistics showed. Such inappropriate scheduling tactics, according to the report, may be the basis for claims of secret waiting lists. Senator John McCain, who until now had held off urging Shinseki to resign, said during a press conference at his Phoenix office Wednesday afternoon that, quote, "It's time for Secretary Shinseki to step down, and that if he won't, quote, then I call on the President of the United States to relieve him of his duties. Fire him," unquote. Yeah, good luck with that one. The longtime senator and Vietnam veteran also called on the Justice Department to get involved, saying the allegations detail not just administrative issues, but criminal problems, unquote. So far, President Obama has stood by his VA secretary, though the White House released a statement saying the president has been briefed on the findings and found them, quote, extremely troubling. Shinseki released a statement on Wednesday calling the latest findings reprehensible, but did not offer his resignation. The report released Wednesday focused on the Phoenix VA facility while noting that reviews at a growing number of facilities have exposed inappropriate scheduling practices throughout the VA system. According to the office, the investigation has now expanded to 42 VA medical facilities nationwide. The IG's office released figures showing the Phoenix office significantly understated the amount of time patients waited for appointments. Quote, "To date, our work has substantiated serious conditions at the Phoenix Center," the report said, claiming the delays have negatively impacted the quality of care, unquote. Yeah, put that together with Obamacare, and what do you got? Disaster. Next up, according to the LA Times, racing to sell the Clippers before being stripped of ownership by the NBA, co-owner Shelley Sterling received at least 3 preliminary offers for the team that could reach up to a record $2 billion. According to 3 people familiar with the process. Wow. Blake Griffin's worth a lot these days, I guess. The offers for the team came from 3 groups with ties to the sports world, according to a person who represents one of the bidders. A representative of one of the bidders' groups said an offer is expected to come from a group backed by Middle Eastern investors.
Oh, no!
Multiple complications still stand between the bidders and a final deal, including acceptance by Sterling, approval by NBA owners, and perhaps most problematic, a clear agreement from her co-owner and husband Donald Sterling that he will sign off on the transfer of the team, which thanks to bipolar statements received at the Evan Miller Report this week, that may not come as soon as we'd hope. Sterling had last week agreed to put his wife in charge of selling the Clippers, roughly 1 month after his comments about African Americans led to his ouster from the NBA, but he said through his lawyer Tuesday and again Wednesday that he might not be ready to give up the team. Sterling wants to be assured that he will no longer face administrative charges by the NBA and might want some other concession before signing off on a deal, said Maxwell Bletcher, Sterling's attorney. Quote, "He wants something to suggest that I, Donald Sterling, don't die with this stigma from this controversy over my head," Bletcher said, though he conceded he was not sure exactly what would be needed to appease the 80-year-old principal owner of the team, and neither are we. Whatever the final sale price, it would be the highest ever in the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks recently sold for a record $550 million earlier this month. And Mr. Emanuel, you're going to send that video over to the NSA, aren't you? I thought so. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel introduced a proposal Wednesday that would require all gun sales in the city to be videotaped as part of a plan to allow gun stores back in Chicago under very tight restrictions. The measure, which would also ban gun stores near schools and parks, was introduced Wednesday at a city council meeting without discussion. It was then referred to the council's Public Safety Committee. A vote on the proposal has not been scheduled. The move comes in response to a January federal court ruling that deemed Chicago's longtime ban on gun stores unconstitutional. The court gave the city 6 months to approve store restrictions while lifting the ban, setting a deadline of July 14th for the new plan. The Democratic mayor's plan, which is likely to be controversial, would aim to significantly limit any gun dealer who wishes to operate in the city. Emanuel's proposal would also require a 72-hour waiting period for purchasing handguns and a 24-hour waiting period for rifles and shotguns. Dealers would then be able to sell only one handgun per month per buyer. Store records will also be subject to quarterly audits. The stores must also have a police-approved security plan before they could open. The plan would have to include exterior lighting, surveillance cameras, alarm systems, and gun and ammunition storage. Store employees would also be forced to undergo fingerprinting, background checks, and training on identifying potential gun traffickers. Stores could not reopen at the same location for 3 years if the city revoked its business license for ordinance violations. On Tuesday, Emanuel, who was speaking at the Chicago Police Department's annual awards ceremony, pushed the merits of his plan. He called the new rules a smart, tough, and enforceable way to prevent illegal guns in the city of Chicago, the Chicago Tribune reported. Janie Roundtree, the mayor's deputy chief of staff for public safety, echoed the sentiment. Quote, "There is no question it will be the smartest, toughest regulation on gun stores in the country," she said. "It's designed to prevent gun trafficking and illegal sales in these stores," unquote. Calls to the National Rifle Association and local dealers were not immediately returned. In business, according to CNN, the feud between Amazon and Hachette Publishing has extended into another week, with Hachette throwing the latest barbs at the online retail giant for delaying shipments of its books. On Wednesday, the publisher accused Amazon of selling books, quote, "like any other consumer good." They are not, Hachette said in a statement filled with indignation at Amazon's business practices. Over the past few weeks, Amazon has delayed shipments of Hachette books and last week blocked its customers from pre-ordering new Hachette titles. Amazon wants a bigger cut on sales from Hachette, but the publisher has resisted, according to a New York Times report. Amazon's boycott of Hachette has made it a target of contempt in the publishing world. Authors that write under contract for Hachette complain about a drop in book sales and fear lower royalties. In reaction, Amazon has tried to deflect the bad publicity. The company posted a message in its website forum saying it takes it seriously whenever a business interruption affects authors. As a peace offer, Amazon proposed a joint fund with Hachette to pay authors back for any missed royalties. Hachette, however, hit back by laying the blame for the dispute and financial consequences entirely on Amazon. Amazon has acknowledged that the fight is far from over. Although the companies have been working hard to reach an agreement, the two sides are still far apart, the company said on Tuesday. Oh, here's some delicious business news. McDonald's will return between $18 and $20 billion to shareholders between 2014 and 2016, the company said Wednesday. They say this will enhance long-term shareholder value. Man, do I wish I had McDonald's stock now. The $18 to $20 billion return to shareholders is a 10 to 20% increase from 2011 to 2013. Senior Executive VP and Chief Financial Officer Pete Benson said in a statement, quote, "Our 3-year cash return target is based on several activities, including the significant free cash flow generated from our operations, as well as the use of cash proceeds from our debt additions and refranchising activity," unquote. The company will also refranchise about 1,500 restaurants by the end of 2016. Most of these restaurants are in the Asia-Pacific region, the Middle East, and Africa and Europe. Quote, "The plan to win along with our competitive advantages, system alignment, and financial discipline has served as our strategic roadmap guiding the execution of our global growth priorities," said CEO Don Thompson. "Today, the plan to win has evolved as we re-energize the McDonald's system by placing the customer at the center of everything we do. We are pursuing targeted growth opportunities to provide our customers with their favorite food and drink, create memorable experiences, offer unparalleled convenience, and become an even more trusted brand to deliver the most meaningful impact for our customers and our business," unquote. Where are my memorable experiences? Yeah, that's right. McDonald's will likely increase its dividend, which is currently at 3.2% yield, as well as buy back shares. Of course, McDonald's stock is good for dividend investors, and the company isn't going anywhere soon, but most analysts say there are better plays out there than McDonald's, such as Jay's Ritz Chris, right, Jay? Cheers. Back to you, Jay.
Oh, nice work, Corey. If only we can get them as an advertiser, that would be So great. My goodness, nice play on words there, Doc. And I'm sure Orlene Kurla would agree with that sentiment. I'm not sure she would be agreeing with the grammar, though. She joins us now for our favorite segment of the week, at least my favorite segment, called Global Socialism. Welcome back, Orlene.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you. How are you both?
Well, Corey is not here, but I am doing well. Matter of fact, thank you very much. Soko, our person over at SHR Media, says it sounds good. Yeah, I'm craving a steak too, a nice New York steak to be exact. Oh, so what do we look at? What are we looking at this week? We have so many stories to get to, and only less than 30 minutes to get to them all. I guess the big story that at least is hidden over down here in Southern California is about this fiery fight over the makers of this popular hot sauce, Orlene. The Irwindale City Council has now voted to drop a public nuisance lawsuit against the makers of the hot sauce after the hot sauce factory decided to leave the state of California. And this caused some backlash to the 5 people who filed the complaint because they claimed that the so-called exhaust coming out of the smokestack, so to speak, at the factory was burning their eyes. Your thoughts on this?
Unbelievable. It just shows, again, how regulation has gone amok. And because 5 people complain, therefore they think that they have to close down the entire business or regulate them so that they will close down themselves and leave the state. Probably they would get so many people who would compliment the makers of the hot sauce, but they're not listening to that. It just shows again how we are. Some people say that we have 3 branches of government, as you know, the executive, the legislative, the judicial, and then we have a 4th branch, which is the regulatory branch, which is just running our nation into the ground, and this is an example of that.
Absolutely, and no wonder you have companies like the likes of Toyota threatening to leave they're already leaving the state due to regulations and due to high taxes and going over to Texas, where Rick Perry has cut them out a nice deal. So no wonder we see businesses like this leaving each and every day. All right, keeping on some California issues, so I do apologize in advance to our people who are listening in nationally on the SHR Media Networks tonight. Sometimes California is one of those states that you have to report on some of the stories here because what happens here in the state of California, Orlene, tends to happen nationwide.
That's right. That's why people need to pay attention to California.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. Ending water wars could spark tax wars. This according to Wayne Luzardi, who wrote an article on May the 23rd for CalWatchdog.com, CalWatchdog.com. That was correct. I was correct in the first place. Phil Eisenberg wants to end California's water wars. The member of the Delta Stewardship Council and its past chair wants to connect the cost of water more closely to its users. According to a report by the California Economic Summit, he points out that the cost of water is about $30 billion a year for the state, and it breaks down to 4% from federal spending, 12% from state spending, and 84% from water users. And they have a very big graphic here with a bunch of numbers, Orlene. And Orlene, I am not good at math, so explain these numbers to us. You're the school teacher in the room tonight, and how Phil's proposal would affect people here in California.
Well, I did not see the article, but I believe that this is going to end up, they're planning to tax all Californians for the use of water, and they've already been trying to do that in the rural areas where my husband and I live. We're on 8 acres out in Santa Rosa, California. Part of their general plan in 2006, they wanted to put some kind of a meter on everyone's well so they could monitor and tax our use of water. They just seem to forget a minor thing, is that when people own property, they also own the water that is underneath the ground. This has been the long-standing law of our nation from its beginning. It's called water rights that go along with property rights. Well, they're trying to change all of that by making it appear that water is part of the collective, belongs to everyone. So we've really fought that here in Sonoma County. I started a group called Sonoma County Land Rights Coalition, and that was the only issue we actually won. Everything else, the general plan went through, but there was such a protest by, I think we had like 30,000 well owners in our county, and these people were so angry. They said, you dare to set foot on our property to put a meter on our well, and you're going to see the two barrels of my shotgun or my pitchfork. Or so that so frightened the planning commissioners. They changed that policy. But inside the city, of course, people just don't have the same rights, and they're going to make it so that they can now tax their water, and they're already cutting down on the water usage by making the cost of water so enormous. And they're telling people, well, don't have lawns anymore. Just get rid of all of your lawns, bring in some kind of artificial turf. But the sad thing is, if they really think that that's supposed to help the atmosphere, lawns are what absorb CO2 and bring out oxygen for people to breathe. They're one of the best absorbers of CO2, and they're going to destroy that, and it'll just be more CO2 out in the atmosphere, exactly opposite of what they're planning on.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a moment, because Bill Eisenberg responds and saying, well, for one thing, because this is a direct contrary to popular perception, and most of the recommendations of interest groups who come to Sacramento, or at least the ones who talk to us, most of the water decisions about what to build and who pays are made locally in California, and grumpy ratepayers pay the majority of the cost. He also noted that only $1 billion of that $300 billion the state spends on water comes from bond funds, yet California spent about $25 billion on 5 voter-approved statewide water bonds since the year 2000. The state hasn't derived a drop of water storage from these bonds to lessen the impact of the current combined drought and man-made water storage. 54% that funding went for open space acquisitions. Another 14% went for restoring wetlands, and none went for water storage, as shown by a graph below in the CalWatchdog.com article. What do you say to him?
Unbelievable. That explains why California is having their water problems. And my neighbor, who used to teach biology in the public schools, he said California really is not suffering from a drought. We're just suffering from faulty water storage. And that's exactly it. They're getting rid of dams. They're getting rid of the water storage areas. And when you do have a time of year when there isn't a lot of water, you could rely on that water that was stored, and that could now help the farmers in the Central Valley with their drought problems, their lack of water. But instead of using the water wisely, they're flushing it out into the ocean, pretending to save a stupid little delta smelt that looks just like a minnow. And anyway, it's just ludicrous. You can obviously see that they have another agenda behind all of this. They are deliberately trying to drive the farmers off their lands in the Central Valley and gain more control over people by gaining more control over their water.
Absolutely, and I mentioned tax wars, so I'll bring the taxes part of this thing up to a head. If Prop 26 were gutted to remove the provision requiring a tax or regulatory fee to benefit those who are taxed, it might undo a recent water rate court decision last month as Sacramento judge ruled based on Prop 26 that the water rates of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California would overcharge the San Diego County Water Authority by $2 billion over 45 years. Without Prop 26, the court may have had to rule differently. Finally, any attempt to change Proposition 13 would be met with a string of resistance from anti-tax groups such as the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Such groups contend that any weakening of Prop 13 might lead to gutting the whole proposition, leading to a much higher property taxes for homeowners.
That's so true. Prop 13 has been the greatest thing that California could possibly have done. When you see the other states that have nothing to protect them, their property taxes go up every year. They're just skyrocketing. This is the one good thing Californians have to protect them. And, of course, these liberals and progressives would like to get rid of Prop 13, and they keep trying every year in some way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is unbelievable how our assembly and state senators just continue to waste our taxpayer dollars day in and day out, Orlene. Hard to believe.
Except here in California, it's easy to believe because we live in a strange land of fruits and nuts.
People across the nation look at California and they're listening to this program tonight and they're looking at, okay, what's these crazy California people doing all day? Just sitting up there thinking up all these crazy laws while drinking a glass of wine with all these red tape bureaucrats up there. And my answer to them would be, yes, that's a good assumption. You guys are actually thinking right, because even though you don't live in the state, you got us down pretty down pat.
That's right.
All right.
If only we could become like Texas, that is equally a very large state, but their state legislators only meet every other year, so they cannot do as much damage. And our California legislators meet every year, long sessions, and come out with the most outrageous bills that don't make any sense. And every year we lose more and more of our rights. It is amazing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, look, final California thing for this evening, because I'm sure the national audience is gritting their teeth saying, no more California stories. Okay. This one has some national significance because this has to do with Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein has finally got her San Joaquin River Settlement Act passed through Congress, but has come back to haunt her because it created foreseeable but unaddressed farm water shortage in dry years, such as now. Feinstein has recently criticized the environmentalists who helped her design the bill as never having been helpful to me in producing good water policy. Passed when Democrats control both the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, the bill appropriates, let me get this number right, $88 million in planned funding for a proposed $2.2 billion restoration project. In 2010, Republicans took back the U.S. House of Representatives and subsequently have blocked any additional funding to implement the project. Feinstein is now backtracking as revised and successfully pushed for Bill S-2198, the Emergency Drought Relief Act of 2014, through the Senate on May the 23rd. It will now be considered in the full House for merger with a Republican drought bill, H.R. 39S4, by Representative Dave Baldew, a Republican, and the bill was formally named H.R. 1937 by Representative David Nunes of Tulare. And I forget which state that's in, so forgive me, Orlene, for my geographical differences right there.
Nunes is in California. He represents part of the Central Valley, and he's been trying every way he can to try to get the water back to California and protect the farmers.
So what's your thoughts on this? Feinstein, is she going to do well because of this? Will she get reelected when it comes to her reelection promises that she's been fighting for this, or is it going to end up hitting her in the, excuse the term, patootie?
I'm sorry to say I don't really trust her, and the fact that this is the main reason why they are objecting to her bill is the enormous cost. $88 million or $2.2 billion restoration fees.
Wow. Yeah, I know. It's something. Well, only time will tell when election time comes around for her whether she'll keep her seat in office. I'm thinking the GOP is thinking in their mind, okay, who can we put up against this woman and use in the environmentalism as her Achilles heel. At least that's what's going through my mind.
And that's probably correct. But there is not a huge cost to bringing the water back to the Central Valley. They just have to allow it to come back through the Delta and allow the places in Northern California that they have been using for storing water to be used for that purpose and not waste the water as they've been doing, flushing it into the bay. So it'd be interesting to find out why she feels the cost of this has to be so enormous.
Yeah, I know. All you have to do is refill the dams from the Colorado River. How much money is that going to take? Of course, I'm no mathematician and I'm no government expert on dams. I leave that to the experts who do it. But really, it's a good question to ask. How much money would it take to actually refill these dams up and these water resources here in the state of California? So, interesting topic. All right, we are almost out of time with you, and I have a couple more stories that I do want to cover with you tonight. Let's go ahead and move over to Common Core tonight. The Working Families Party is eyeing education activist Diane Rakovich. Of course, she is the wife of former Governor Rakovich, and she is age 75 and is possibly being looked at as a nominee to run against the current governor, Governor Cuomo. And of course, Arlene, Diane Rakovich, I've done my research on this. She was in education, one of the people in George H.W. Bush's administration to first introduce nationalized standards. And she is a big person who is against charter schools, and that's one of the reasons why the Working Families Party is possibly eyeing her to challenge Cuomo in the upcoming Democratic Party. What's your thoughts on this?
Oh, is this Diane Ravitch? Is it Ravitch, her last name?
Yes.
Well, she is a big opponent of Common Core, and what is nice, because she's a Democrat, she's highly respected by a lot of Democrats. I quote her in both of my books, and she's written many articles against Common Core. I think it'd be great if they would run her. At least she would should really bring Common Core to the head in the state of New York and wake up a lot of people who don't already know about it. And
okay, let me rewind the tape here. You just said she opposes Common Core, because according to this Daily News article, it would sound as if she is for Common Core. So I just want to be correct here. She is opposing it?
She has. Originally, when it came out, she was in support of it, thinking that it would help raise the standards like it was proposed to, and that it would help especially the lower performing children and in some of the poorer districts. And she found out that is not the case at all. So she's very opposed to Common Core and has written lots of articles against it. If you just Google Diane Ravitch, you'll find amazing articles that she has written against Common Core. And she's also written articles against David Coleman, who's really considered the chief architect of the standards. She says that the reason the English language arts standards are so wacky, and how he's trying to make it so that there are no more, or at least not as much, classical English literature being read. He's making it so that there is more informational text, which is just reading lots of things online and emailed or e-books instead of classical English literature books, and doing lots of writing, is because he never really enjoyed that himself. So he thinks that everyone throughout the whole world, at least throughout our nation, has to do more writing, less reading. Well, it is from reading that our young children learn how to be good writers. The best writers were those who were avid readers. His biggest problem is he knows nothing about teaching K through 12 because he never was a teacher in the public schools. He just has lots of college degrees. So Diane Ravitch has written lots of articles against him, and has really exposed so much of the background of Common Core.
So that's an interesting story right there, and a surprise to me. And now I will not be using the Daily News as a source for this program anymore. Good catch there, Orlene. You corrected me tonight, and dutifully so. Well done.
And then you said also that she is for charter schools. Is that right?
She was against charter schools. At least that's what the Daily News article said. So that article, now I'm not holding with a grain of salt. So if you need to correct me on that, by all means, you may do so.
Well, I think that is correct. I think she is against charter schools because she realizes that they would be taking away representation for parents, because most charter schools throughout the nation come under a charter that comes either from the state or from a corporation. A lot of charter schools are coming under Bill Gates Foundation. And most people understand that really destroys representation and accountability. Parents don't know where to go when they see that they don't like what's going on in the school. Who do they go to complain to? Because they have no elected official over these charter schools. Everyone is appointed. So I think she recognizes that as well.
Well, you mentioned writers, so we'll move on to our next story because we are limited on time, as I stated earlier tonight with you. Maya Angelou, a famous poet, has died this week, and she has waited. Well known that she was a supporter of President Obama before she died. She's been known as an author, actress, and human rights activist, and her last recorded words were apparently captured a week ago today, and she will be put speaking in a video statement delivered at Friday's Major League Baseball Civil Rights game in Houston at the Houston Astros. Now, Arlene, I did not know this at least until you told me. She is a very big proponent and communist author, at least in our general opinions. Tell me how much damage she has done.
She is. She's very liberal, very progressive, and some of the books that are required reading, like her book called The Bluest Eye, it's a story of a young girl who was essentially raped by her father, by her brothers, and by a family friend who was a pedophile. And all these scenes are graphically written inside Maya Angelou's books, and yet this is required reading, recommended reading under Common Core. And in my latest book, which is called The Hidden Seas of Common Core, all those C words they don't want us to know, I go in deeper lengths into the curriculum, and I write about 3 different books that parents are very upset about, that is Common Core aligned, Common Core recommended, and one of those is The Bluest Eye. And much of her literature is just so sexually explicit, not at all appropriate for teenagers. I don't think it's appropriate for anyone. It's pornography. And yet she is being highly praised. It's mainly because she's black. I think if she were a white author and had written these things, never would she have been so popular. But it's because she's black, and as you know, that seems to be a popular thing to do when you're black, to be a great writer, and I do believe that she is so far to the left in her views that I would call her communist.
Wow. Okay, well, moving on from one communist to another, how about that for a Thursday edition of the Global Socialism segment? I love him as an actor, but as a person working with Reading Rainbow, well, that opinion has changed. LeVar Burton wants to bring back Reading Rainbow for a whole new generation of children. The man who asked us to take a look in a book is launching a Kickstarter campaign to raise $1 million to bring his show back to the web. Of course, the popular show, Orlene, ran from year 1983 to year 2006 and continued in reruns on local PBS station until 2009. But Arlene, at least according to what we know, LeVar Burton is a very big staunch supporter of Common Core.
Yes, and it's so interesting. I was listening to a radio program today, KGO, which comes out of San Francisco, and it's the progressive station. It's the one that the liberals listen to. This talk show host was interviewing, his name is Ron Owens, he was interviewing a man who is a big proponent of Common Core, and he asked for people to call in if anyone was of an opposite viewpoint, and it was amazing. There was not one person who called in and supported Common Core. They were all saying terrible things about it, and one man said that it's really destroying the children's desire to read, and someone else said that the statistics today, they were asked how many of our young people actually read a book for pure pleasure, and how many times do they do that. The ratio was 1 or 2 times a year. That is all. And so you can see that Common Core is destroying their desire to read. If he has any success bringing back reading through his reading rainbow, who knows? One of the biggest problems is they are not giving children really good literature to read. They're giving literature that has no real plot, nothing of any value. Just like this Bluest Eye, what value does a young person gain from reading one rape scene after another? It's just destroying their whole concept of morality, and after a while they're not even shocked by this anymore. And that's perhaps part of it.
Well, what's funny to me is I alerted to you this about 3 or 4 months ago when I was still living up in the LA area, and I still get Los Angeles news feeds here down in San Diego from time to time. And I was watching the KTLA 5 morning news, and Sam Rubin, their entertainment reporter, was interviewing LeVar Burton about Reading Rainbow, and he was touting the Reading Rainbow app. And for those like Orlean who are listening in tonight who don't know what an app is, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, I have an iPhone myself, you can go to the App Store and download sometimes free apps, sometimes the apps you have to pay for them. But he was promoting to download the free Reading Rainbow app, where he would go on the app every day with Reading Rainbow and put a book up there that Reading Rainbow would randomly choose to put on there, and your kid could read the book off the Reading Rainbow app, or they could read it off through the website, whichever they choose, or they could do it on the iPad. And we all know, Orlane, how the iPad program has turned out to be, especially in the LA Unified School District.
Yes, and what was so interesting, too, a lady that called in on this radio program this morning said that they were so thinking that all of the e-books would now replace an actual physical book, but it hasn't happened. People still like picking up a book and reading it. And this lady said that they've discovered studies that part of the brain that gets activated when you hold a physical book is not being activated by an e-book. And that's the creativity part of the brain, the imagination of the brain. There's something about reading an actual book with pages that activates this part of the brain when an e-book doesn't, and that I thought was so interesting. And of course, if Common Core has its way, our children will be mainly learning everything from computers, including their reading of books. But maybe it's not going to happen as they planned, because this, as I mentioned, was a liberal station and a liberal lady reporting, and yet they said that actual physical books are much better for a young person to read than reading something online with their iPads and computers. Isn't that interesting?
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. All right, do you have time for one more story? Because I think the story will hit close to home for you since you're a school teacher.
Sure.
Okay. An entire class of graduating seniors in a Chicago suburb were denied diplomas after the students ignored warnings not to throw their graduation caps into the air during Tuesday's commencement ceremonies. Andrea Torskis said it was the perfect ending to the graduation, but unfortunately, we didn't get our diplomas, she said. the Ringgold High School students in northwest suburban Norridge in Illinois will not be given their diplomas unless they publicly apologize in front of the school board, according to school officials. School administrators who say the students were warned repeatedly beforehand called their actions disrespectful. Superintendent Dr. Robert Lupo explained the reasoning behind the decision on his blog. Quote, the gym is decorated, people dress up, some of them. We expect dignified behavior. Secondly, it is an indoor event. In past ceremonies, people have been hit by flying caps. We just as soon as not have the graduates leaving with cuts and black eyes. Lupo also addressed the students who didn't throw their caps, saying they would voice their concerns with the students who didn't listen. One parent, Mary DeSta, supports the students. She says it was kind of silly they would request them not to. It wasn't a way to disrespect anyone, it's just a way to do something together and celebrate the end of the year. Lupo also said on his blog that perhaps it is the final lesson they will take away from high school, that there are consequences for behaviors in life. So what do you think about this, Orlean? The kids, it's the last day of the year. This is a tradition in high schools, colleges across the nation. It's a tradition that they throw the caps up in the air. So I
think this is just one more example of control, and that's what is behind Common Core. That's what's going on all across our nation, and how ridiculous. This has been a fun tradition. I did it when I was graduating from high school and college, and nobody got hurt. You may not get your cap back. It may have been, thrown so far that someone else has it. But to not allow them to have their diplomas until they apologize to the school board, that is so ridiculous. I can't believe it. And I'm hoping these kids have some big protest and show how ridiculous this is.
Well, you know what? I think it needs some Curla power. Maybe you need to call Superintendent Lupo and give him your retired teacher's opinion.
And he's all the way in Illinois, huh?
That's correct, Orlean.
Well, we do have some strong Eagle Forum members in Illinois. Maybe I will ask the president of Illinois to take this on. This is so silly.
I think it would be an honorable thing to do. And if you can give us an update in the next couple of weeks, so that I understand it'll take a couple of weeks probably for it to happen, then we'll be glad to do it. By the way, I know we're out of time with you, but real quickly, is there still room left for the 14th Annual California Eagle Forum Conference on June the 14th, which the Evan Miller Report is proud to be broadcasting all 5 hours of?
Yes, there is definitely still room, and if people would like to come, please go to our website, eagleforumofcalifornia.org, and you can see the registration form and either print that out and send it in, or you can register online through Eventbrite. And we would love lots more people to come. There's still plenty of room.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having coming up there and finally meeting you, Orlean. I met you a couple of years ago, but only from a distance, and looking forward to finally meeting you in person, and of course looking forward to seeing Phyllis Shapley's big speech, and of course Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute is on this program from time to time. We're looking forward to having him on the air as well. So thanks very much, Orlean.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to seeing you there on the 14th as well. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Thank you, Orlean. EagleForumOfCalifornia.org is the place to go to get more information. And that was Orlean Curla from Californians United Against Common Core, also the president of the Eagle Forum of California. And as I said, for more information about the 14th Annual Eagle Forum Conference, go to EagleForumCalifornia.org for more information. And if you can't get out here to California, if you're not here in the state of California, tune into the Evan Miller Report. SHR Media Networks is proud to be co-sponsoring this with us. On June the 14th, we'll be broadcasting all 5 hours of the conference. We'll take a break at lunchtime at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific time, and have a special edition of the Exceptional Conservative Show with the Exceptional Conservative himself, Ken McClinton, with contributions, of course, by Dan Butcher of the Pundit Press over in our Houston newsroom. So we're all looking forward to that tonight. On the 14th of June. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take a short break here on the program. But when we come back, John Boehner and Nancy Pelosi agreeing on something. My goodness, as something's happened with the deep sea water over there. We'll find out more on that story. Plus, Hillary Clinton has an impromptu lunch with Barack Obama. I wonder what was on the menu and what was the topic of the conversation. We'll have that story, plus Corey's lawsuits across America and entertainment news. I'm Jason Miller. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and 100 Press Radio.
Darcy here grew up riding horses.
I'm a cowgirl.
A tough cowgirl, battling a rare, inoperable brain tumor. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital created a new treatment that's shrinking her tumor. We're taking bold steps to help save her life.
Better than your steps.
Never wear sandals on a farm.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Today, my new dad threw a barbecue.
Today, my new son and I threw a barbecue.
There were burgers and chicken.
I burnt everything. The burgers, the chicken, the salad.
They were delicious.
They were awful.
And then we had watermelon.
I'm allergic to watermelon.
And then we played catch.
I broke Mr. Lewis's window, Mrs. Wakeham's window, Mrs. Wakeham's windshield. And then, somehow, my hand. My hand!
And then my dad even let me drive his car.
The hospital's on the right! It was a rough day.
It was a great day.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Darcy here grew up riding horses.
I'm a cowgirl.
A tough cowgirl, battling a rare, inoperable brain tumor. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital created a new treatment that's shrinking her tumor. We're taking bold steps to help save her life.
Better than your steps.
Never wear sandals on a farm.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and 100 Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller here with you tonight. Glad to have you with us, as always, on the program tonight. Corey's lawsuits across America and entertainment segment coming up tonight on the program. All right, you thought you've seen everything, but now the top Republican and Democrat in the House of Representatives are ready to join other members of Congress who say Veterans Secretary Eric Zecke should resign. Wow. I say to this, John Boehner and Nancy Pelosi said Thursday that they are reserving judgment about embattling Secretary Zecke, and firing him would reward those who misled him. Even if Shinseki were to step down, they would get to the bottom of the problems for the VA's troubled healthcare system, said Boehner. The real issue here is that the president is the one who should be accountable, Boehner said. Nancy Pelosi of California said that it's easy for politicians to call for the resignation of a top leader such as Shinseki, but asked, is that the solution? The comments by the two House leaders come as another Democratic Senator, Virginia's Mark Warner, called for Shinseki to step aside. Warner is the sixth Senate Democrat to call for Shinseki's resignation since Wednesday, when the VA's Inspector General reported he has found systematic problems at the VA nationwide. All are facing tough election campaigns this fall. The report, of course, we remember the report as we reported yesterday, said that about 1,700 veterans in need of care were at risk of being lost or forgotten after being kept off the official waiting list at the Phoenix VA hospital. Veterans on the list waited on an average of 115 days for their first appointment, nearly 5 times longer than the average of the hospital that have reported to the National VA. All right, folks, moving on. One more D.C. story we have for you tonight. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and potential presidential candidate in 2016, some people tell me all the time, had a secret lunch with President Barack Obama on Thursday, and an unannounced meeting sure to fuel extensive speculation at a time when she's widely expected to seek his job in 2016. The president enjoyed an informal private lunch with Secretary Clinton at the White House this afternoon, White House official told Yahoo News on condition of anonymity. The get-together was not on Obama's public schedule. Word of the lunch emerged thanks to People magazine, which tweeted a photograph of its Washington bureau chief, veteran political reporter Sandra Sober Westfall, standing with Clinton, apparently at the former First Lady's home in Washington. Without explanation, People deleted the tweet after it gained considerable attention among reporters, but the Washington Examiner White House correspondent Susan Crabtree got the screenshot from above. S. Westfall chats with @Hillary Clinton before her MTG at White House. Hope we didn't make her late for @Barack Obama. The magazine later republished the tweet, changing MTG to lunch. Well, all I can say is I wonder what's on the menu. Caviar, expensive lobster, that's going on the taxpayer dime. I want an expenditure report on that sent to me, Mr. President. You're having an unpaid, unlicensed lunch, an unannounced lunch over there. I thought big lunches were for dignitaries. I guess I was wrong. And whoever is with me on that, please message me over on Facebook. Just simply say to me aye or nay whether you want that expenditure report, how much that lunch actually cost the taxpayers here in the state of California. And reporting on some news here in California, and this has nothing to do with environmentalism, but it does have something to do with the assembly. Local assemblymen, not assemblyman, but local supervisor Jeff Stone was pulled over and had an incident in his Temecula district here in California. Supervisor Stone explained he had just come from the county hospital and was suffering from a bad toothache. But what wasn't said was that he was driving recklessly on the freeway and almost caused a traffic accident with someone by the name of Arnold. He was angry. They had a confrontation, and Supervisor Stone showed his badge as if he was law enforcement. So they pulled over near a local Starbucks in the Promenade Mall over in Temecula, and I know where this is, folks, because I used to live in the area, and this was right off the side of the 215, Interstate Federal 215 here in the state of California, if you look up, for those of you who geographically want to know where this is. Ultimately, Supervisor Stone was not arrested for the incident, and the men made up by saying apologies to each other. But people like former State Senator Dennis Hollingsworth came out and said, should this be the way that supervisors like Supervisor Stone should be acting? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. All right, folks, it's time to go over to Corey tonight, and he has tonight's entertainment and lawsuits across America. Corey.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you, Pat. Please be seated. Come to order. Lawsuits across America is now in session. First item on the docket comes to us out of Cincinnati, Ohio, from Ohio.com. A lawsuit against police and government bodies in a flawed Northern Ohio drug sting was rejected by a federal appeals panel on Wednesday. The 3/6 U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals judges upheld a lower court's ruling that the 6 people who sued didn't sufficiently show that their constitutional rights were violated. One judge, however, wrote a separate opinion critical of plea bargaining in the botched case. The lawsuit came after the federal government dropped cases from the 2005 Mansfield drug investigation that used a corrupt paid informant who said he helped frame suspects. The 2008 lawsuit charged false arrest, malicious prosecution, fabrication of evidence, and other rights violations. Wednesday's ruling said that while the plaintiffs showed substantial evidence of general wrongdoing, they didn't prove their individual constitutional rights were violated. Quote, simply put, to establish liability and to overcome a qualified immunity defense, an individual must show that his or her own rights were violated and that the violation was committed personally by the defendant, Judge Julia Smith-Gibbons wrote. A message was left Wednesday for their attorney, Deborah Lovey-Reyes of Chicago. Among 7 investigators sued was Lee Lucas, a Drug Enforcement Administration agent acquitted by a Cleveland jury in 2010 of charges he framed 17 people. The plaintiffs also sued Richland County, the city of Cleveland, and the United States. Wow, you're suing me in there as well.
That ain't right.
The federal drug informant, Gerald Bray, died in prison in 2012. And second item comes to us from CourierJournal.com. An Ashland hospital has agreed to pay $40.9 million to the government to settle claims that it made millions of dollars by falsely billing Medicaid and Medicare for unnecessary heart procedures, the second such settlement in Kentucky this year. The payment announced Wednesday by King's Daughters Medical Center settles a government lawsuit alleging the hospital, quote, knew, deliberately ignored, or recklessly disregarded the fact that its cardiologists were inserting stents and performing catheterizations on people who didn't need them. Perrier Turner, special agent in charge of the FBI's Louisville Field Division, said in a statement that, quote, the level of funds involved in this matter is staggering. This money has been stolen from the patients and taxpayers.
Give it back.
The settlement represents roughly double the amount of money King's Daughters received as a result of the alleged fraudulent billing for the unnecessary services, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Lexington, which described it as the largest ever involving a hospital in the state's Eastern District, which consists of 67 counties. The state of Kentucky will receive a little over $1 million from the settlement, which represents the state's share of the recovered Medicaid funds. The Medicaid program is jointly funded by the federal and state governments. The settlement doesn't protect the hospital or its doctors from potential criminal charges, or about 520 suits filed by former heart patients against the hospital and its coronary group, and it definitely shouldn't. It comes on the heels of another announced in January in which Kentucky One Health's St. Joseph Hospital in London agreed to pay $16.5 million to the federal government to resolve civil allegations that it submitted fraudulent claims for unnecessary heart procedures. And final item on the docket today, ladies and gentlemen, comes to us from the AP. Medical device maker Medtronic, Inc. will pay the U.S. Department of Justice $9.9 million,
just shy of the $10 million mark,
to settle a lawsuit that accused the company of giving doctors gifts in return for using its defibrillators and pacemakers. Medtronic has not admitted to any wrongdoing as a result of the settlement. The lawsuit unsealed this week accused Medtronic of funneling millions of dollars in unrestricted grant money to physicians to get them to encourage use of Medtronic defibrillators and pacemakers in patients whose, quote, mild heart failure symptoms did not meet criteria for an implantable device. The settlement is the result of a whistleblower complaint filed by a former Medtronic employee, Adolfo Schroeder. The Department of Justice says Schroeder will receive about $1.7 million. And with that, I will declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed. Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you very much, Corey. And if you're wondering what happened with Corey's voice there, I think he lost all the air in the studio over there. So he had to recompress the air because all the environmentalists took all the air out because they thought it was CO2. Would you agree, Ken?
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. Listen, I'm amazed at the simple fact of the matter that some people got medical procedures that they didn't need. In the VA, you have to wait at least 4 weeks to see a doctor to schedule a surgery.
That's Obamacare.
That's medically necessary.
Don't you know?
It's Obamacare on steroids, the VA. Good evening, everyone. This is Kim McClinton, the Exceptional Conservative. Thank you so much for having me back on tonight, Jason.
Absolutely. And, of course, we have Ken on every night to tell us what's coming up at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific time on the Exceptional Conservative Show here on SHR Media Networks. What you got cooking tonight, Ken?
Well, we got a lot of good stuff tonight. First and foremost, SHR, Pundit Press, will be hosting my debut blog post on their particular site. I hope that you all get a chance to go to SHR Media or to Pundit Press Radio and you'll see these particular exercises, futility, as I write about corruption in Washington, D.C. Also tonight, Nomi Darwish. You know the young lady who's the president and founder of Arabs for Israel, who was successfully disconnected from our phone lines through cyber attack last Tuesday. And in fact, you and Janice Hall and also Sean from Sackheads Radio just championed the cause. You came in there, you took over for me, and I really appreciate that. Well, tonight, Nomi Darwish will be joining us again at 9 p.m. Only this time you'll be able to hear her.
Well, hopefully security precautions are going to be taken with
exactly. That. BTR alert.
Yeah, if they cut her off, if BTR cuts her again, I'm going to be screaming.
You and I both. You and I both.
And then Corey, is going to have for both of us to calm us down. All right. Well, yes, it is. It's terrific. So it looks like you got a good pot roast of a broadcast cooked up for tonight's show, Ken, and we always look forward to chatting with you on air, and of course Monday through Wednesday, 9:45 Eastern, 6:45 Pacific on the Exceptional Conservative Show. So we always look forward to that. By the way, your thoughts. Speaking of cooking, you hear Hillary Clinton had that lunch with Barack Obama today, unannounced lunch today. What do you think the bill was for that?
It's a tenacious sum that we can't even afford. Even if it was at Wendy's, we can't afford them going to lunch together because they certainly aren't paying for it themselves. We're picking up that particular tab. But they're probably discussing how they can possibly endorse Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States while they attempt to basically shield themselves from the impending investigation of Benghazi, Extortion 17, Fast and Furious, the IRS, also EPA. It's like about 27 scandals. And then, forgive me, the VA. And they all have initials.
Yeah,
28 scandals.
I know it goes on and on. We get a new scandal every day. It's amazing to me. As I asked everyone here on this program, that you could probably ask them on your show too, Ken. For those who want the expenditure report just for that unannounced lunch that wasn't put on the budget for the White House budget, send me an I or NI whether you want that expenditure report sent out and made available to the media. It doesn't have to be brought exclusively to us. It can be sent to everyone. You can even send it to the people over at NBC News. I won't have a problem with it.
Not at all. And you know what? I think Al Sharpton can probably pick up the tab. He could just add it to the amount he owes the federal government. Just pile it on. That's all we're talking about. It's just a tab. No one has to pay it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Definitely. Also, Willie Nelson, I hear he owes a big thing in Texas, too.
Just everyone add on, pile on, because no one has to pay the tab. Well, maybe your great-grandchildren, but again, it's just them.
Now you have me grow another white hair with my other gray hairs up on my head. Thanks so much for that, Ken. I really appreciate that.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, well, that officially stinks up the broadcast tonight. Oh, my goodness. Well, Ken, thank you very much for coming on.
Sir.
Everyone, listen to him, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, or else I'm coming over to your house and decompressing all the air out of your house, and you'll float like that movie Upside Down. That's
exactly. I will actually bring you the DVD of X-Men to your house if you don't that night.
Okay, well, now you brought the movies up. You had to bring the movies up. What do you think of the upcoming Maleficent movie? Of course, it doesn't come out tomorrow. Are you going to see it, and are you going to endorse it, even since ultra-liberal Angelina Jolie is going to be in it?
And what movie is this?
This is Maleficent. It is the real sort of non-animation version of Sleeping Beauty?
You know what? I'm interested in that film because while others were reading the Disney-related versions of those particular myths at a very young age, I was actually reading the original, the blood and gory and the guts-oriented ones, where the actual wolf had to be split open. You know, those kind of ones. So the actual Grimm's Tale, I really enjoyed as you. So I'm curious about this film. I'm disappointed from last weekend, but I'm curious about this one. Maybe I'll go and test the water, see what it is, and hopefully it's. I'm already looking at it as a grade C. So if it goes above grade C for me, this must be a great film.
Let's do this. If you can, if it's within your schedule, go see it tomorrow morning on the East Coast, and then why don't you give us a movie review tomorrow's news review.
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to do it tonight, but I most certainly will try. How about Monday? I can do the news.
Not much. That's a good compromise.
Good compromise. There we go. See, I'm going to need you as my agent to negotiate with Sean. There you go.
Oh, you had to bring that up, didn't you? Well, fortunately, Sean is not controlling tonight's broadcast, so the person currently holding this broadcast, I'm your boss, and I can tell you to cut Ken off at any time. Isn't that right? Can I get a confirmation of that? No, we don't censor you, Ken. Not ever, even when you're being a blowhard, as my co-host will brilliantly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you at 9 Eastern Time, 6 Pacific on SHR Media Networks. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. It's Ken McClem of the Exceptional Conservative Show, everyone. Thank you so much for calling in and telling us what's coming up on the program tonight. Well, if you thought that was entertaining, well, we aren't done yet. Corey has your entertainment news tonight, and he probably has a lot about that movie, Maleficent, too, I'm sure. Corey?
Thank you as always, Jason. And it's all's well that ends well in my entertainment news today. Chelsea Handler's notoriously rocky relationship with E! Entertainment will come to an end this August. Bye-bye. The network said Wednesday that Chelsea Lately will conclude its 7-year run with an August 26th finale. It's an earlier than expected departure for Handler, whose contract expires at the end of the year. Quote, I myself am more surprised than anyone that I was able to hold down a job for 7 years, and it was a fantastic 7 years, the 39-year-old comedian said in a statement. I will always look back at my time on E! as most people look back on their time in college. I'm glad I went, unquote. We are very proud of Chelsea Lately's long-running success and the unique space that the series carved out in late-night TV, E! President Suzanne Culp said. Chelsea brought a distinct voice to late night with her acerbic wit and fearless commentary, and we look forward to providing fans with a memorable send-off that lives up to this tradition, unquote. Handler's exit has been in the works for months. Her manager, Irving Azoff, told The Hollywood Reporter in March that Handler wanted to leave when her contract was up. Quote, she hired me to figure out her life after E! We have at least 7 suitors and many ideas, he said. Handler, who has publicly described the network as, quote, a sad, sad place to live, is reportedly working out a production deal with Netflix. Oh no, she's going to be able to make money off of Netflix. Next up, according to NJ.com, an investment company that bought the late Whitney Houston's former mansion in Mendham Township in New Jersey for $999,900 in December has sold it for $1.5 million, according to the real estate agent handling the sale. Not a bad deal. The agent, Greg Taylor, said that prior to the sale, Houston's family retrieved all of its belongings from the property in an amicable conclusion to the lawsuit Houston's family members filed earlier this month after the investment company CPMG Mendham of Jersey City allegedly refused to grant them access to the site. Superior Court Judge Donald Coburn in Morristown issued an order granting the family immediate access to get its property. The new buyer is an unnamed Mendham man who plans to live there with his family and complete significant renovations to the house, Taylor said. The sale closed on May 22nd, Taylor said, adding that the buyer, quote, wants to remain low-key and doesn't want his name used. I don't blame him. The home, built 26 years ago by Sherry and Shelley Bitterman, was sold to Houston for $2.7 million in 1987 at the height of Houston's pop singing stardom. According to Taylor, there was a, quote, bidding war for the house, and it sold after just 64 days on the market. Taylor said he is still, quote, receiving calls from people that want to purchase the house, some at prices in excess of $1.5 million. Sorry, when that sold sign goes up, it is sold.
Sold.
And oh boy, you're going to run into some rotten luck if you're going to Las Vegas this weekend. You may end up finding yourself confronting angry picketers who say they've been dealt a bad hand. The culinary and bartenders unions are planning to strike at 7 casinos in Sin City beginning at 5 a.m. Sunday unless an agreement is reached beforehand, representatives told ABC News. Quote, we will have large picket lines at every unsettled property and in front of nearly all entrances, union spokeswoman Bethany Kahn said, estimating that more than 2,000 workers would be participating.
Oh, no.
Quote, we will be handing out flyers informing tourists of the labor dispute and the strike. We will also be asking tourists, locals, and visitors to respect strike picket lines and not cross them. Restaurant workers, hotel housekeepers, cocktail servers, bartenders, and other members of the unions will walk off their jobs at the D, Four Queens, Binion's, Plaza, Las Vegas Club, El Cortez, and Golden Gate in response to their contracts being terminated. Group representatives say they deserve, quote, to earn a decent living under a fair contract. The unions, which represent more than 55,000 workers, recently reached new 5-year contracts with MGM Resorts International and Caesars Entertainment Corp. That would keep employees' health care costs from increasing, offer flexible scheduling, and potentially bring back workers laid off from shuttered restaurants. I don't see how you can bring them back if the restaurants have been shuttered, but you go right ahead and give it a try.
Whatever.
I think I'll just stick with my movies this weekend. Opening up this week, we've got Maleficent with Angelina Jolie and Charlton Copley, and A Million Ways to Die in the West, made by, of course, Seth MacFarlane. Of course, the critics can't agree if either of those films are good, but we'll leave that to you to decide. At the box office, people have already decided they like X-Men Days of Future Past, at least $90.8 million worth of people. Godzilla brought in $30.9 million this week, and Blended is hanging on to number 3, unfortunately, with $14.3 million.
Thanks a lot, Adam Sandler.
And with that, that is your entertainment report for today. I hope to entertain you tomorrow. Till then, I'm Corey Evans.
Thank you very much, Corey. Very entertaining tonight. The lawsuits across America air out of the studio. The entertainment report with big voices. Oh my. How entertaining is that? I'm sure our people up at SHR Media up in Sacramento must be on the floor laughing their patooties off. I'd say the other word, but then the Christian Family Council will be after me, and I certainly don't want that because I want the endorsement for president in 2016. No, not really, folks. I'm not running for president. All right, folks. Finally tonight on a more somber note this evening. Remember this story that we brought to you about 3 weeks ago about Stephen Sutton, the teenage cancer survivor who raised millions of British dollars for charity? Well, the 19-year-old from Birchwell in Stafford who lodged an appeal in aid of Teenage Cancer Trust has died. His fundraising total ended up hitting the £4 million mark earlier this month. His mother, Jane, said the memorial service at Lichfield Cathedral was a celebration of his life. Stephen's body arrived on a horse-drawn carriage just before 1900 BST, yesterday, a floral display spelling out STE led the funeral procession from his home in Birchwood, Staffordshire, to Lichfield Cathedral. The coffin was then moved inside the cathedral for a short service. Speaking inside the cathedral, the Dean of Lichfield, the very Reverend Adrian Dorber, said, Stephen's all too brief life has shown us the triumph of hope. In the last few weeks, he's won the hearts and minds of people across the world, and we are all better for it. Stephen, of course, was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the age of 15. He drew up a bucket list of things he wanted to achieve before he died. A floral display spelling out STE led the funeral procession from Stephen's home in Birchwood, Staffordshire, to Lichfield Cathedral. This led to him completing a skydive and playing drums in front of 90,000 people before the UEFA Champions League final at Wembley. He originally wanted to raise £10,000 for the Teenage Cancer Trust, but when his condition deteriorated, he set off in pursuit of 1 million pounds. As his story spread, he earned a measure of global fame with donations from nearly 100 different countries. Simon Fuller, the Director of Services at Teenage Cancer Trust, also spoke at the service and said it was a great honor and a privilege to know Stephen. He said, I quote, I am deeply proud but not surprised by how the local community has pulled out all the stops to make this vigil happen. Stephen's approach to cancer and his approach to life has inspired more people than we will ever know. End of quote. Mr. Fuller ended his speech by leading a round of applause in honor of the, quote, courage of Stephen and other young cancer survivors from around the world. At the end of the service, mourners gave Stephen's trademark thumbs-up gesture as they filed slightly past his comment. A 38-minute compilation of Stephen's favorite tracks was then played. Emma Solis, Stephen's head of year during his time at Chase Terrence Technology College, was among those who attended the vigil. She said it felt surreal to be at the event. She continued, he was such a fantastically happy person. I don't think I ever saw him without a smile on his face. A social media thunderclap, a message posted simultaneously on Facebook and Twitter, and is due to take place at 11 p.m. on Friday, British time. Ladies and gentlemen, that is one brave young man who went through many obstacles and died. Congratulations to him for raising $4 million British dollars for cancer. That, my friends, is amazing, and you don't see that every day. And the maturity of that young man and the wisdom of that young man, you will never, you rarely see in young adults these days. My goodness. My hat's off to him for doing what he did. And that is the Evan Miller Report for Thursday, May the 29th, 2014. I'm Jason Miller. For Corey Evan, Orlene Kurla, and the rest of the team up in Sacramento producing at SHR Media, I'm Jason Miller saying so long from San Diego. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and have a wonderful night. Please tune in tomorrow, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, for an exclusive interview between Dave Grant, who's running against Eric Cantor in the Republican Virginia primary for U.S. House. Once again, I'm Jason Miller saying so long from San Diego. Have a great night, and God bless America, everybody. Have a great evening.
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report. For more information about today's program, go to shrmedia.com or associatedpress.com. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again next time.